You hear yourself snap at someone you love, and before the sting even reaches their face, a voice in your head is already explaining why. They started it. I'm exhausted. It's been a long day. The reason arrives so fast and so fully formed that it never once occurs to you to doubt it. But here is what neuroscience has been quietly suggesting for decades. For a surprising amount of what you do, the order you think you're living by runs backwards. You believe you decide, and then you act. Often you act first, and a quiet narrator in your head writes the reason afterward, so smoothly that you mistake the story for the truth. If you have ever felt vaguely at the mercy of your own mind, overthinking a single text message for an hour, comparing yourself to a stranger on a screen, and somehow feeling smaller for it, reacting in a way you can't explain, and then defending it like a lawyer who was paid in advance, then this hour is for you. Not a pep talk, not motivation that evaporates by morning, just a handful of well-established findings about how the mind actually works, the kind almost no one ever sat you down and taught you, the kind that, once you truly understand them, quietly change how you read your own thoughts and feelings for the rest of your life. For the next hour, we're going to meet that narrator, and several other voices you didn't know were running your life. Here's the promise I'll make you, and it's specific. By the end, I want you to be able to catch one of them in the act, to feel, in a real moment in your own ordinary week, a small gap open between what your mind says and what you actually choose to do. That gap is the entire game. Stay with me to the finish, and you'll know exactly where to find it. So let's start with that narrator, because it is the strangest of them all. Decades ago, surgeons treating severe epilepsy did something that sounds invented. They cut the bridge between the two halves of the brain, the thick band of fibers that lets the left and right hemispheres pass notes to each other. The patients walked out, seemingly unchanged, but a young scientist named Michael Gazzaniga realized something remarkable had become possible. You could now send a private message to one half of a person's brain that the other half, the half that talks, knew nothing about. So they tried it. They flashed an instruction, the single word walk, to the silent right hemisphere. The man stood up and began strolling across the room, and then they asked him the obvious question, "Why did you get up?" Now remember, the speaking half of his brain had never seen that word. It had no information. The honest answer was, "I don't know. Something just moved me." But that is not what he said. Without a flicker of hesitation, he answered, "I'm going to get a drink." He was not lying. That is the part that should stop you cold. He completely believed it. His mind had been handed an action with no explanation attached, and rather than sit in the discomfort of the blank, it manufactured a reason on the spot and delivered it with total confidence. And it goes well beyond dramatic surgery. In far gentler experiments, the Swedish psychologist Petter Johansson showed people 2 photographs and asked them to pick the more attractive face. Then, with a small piece of sleight of hand, he handed the photo back, except sometimes he swapped it, so the person was suddenly holding the face they had just rejected. Most people didn't notice the switch at all, and when he asked them to explain their choice, they happily obliged. "I picked her because of her eyes. I liked her smile. She seemed warmer." They defended, in loving detail, a decision they had never actually made. This is your mind too. The talking, conscious part of you feels like the chief executive, the one weighing the options, making the call, signing off. It is closer to a press secretary. The real decisions are frequently made backstage, beneath your awareness, by machinery you cannot watch. Then your conscious mind walks up to the podium and explains those decisions as though it had been in the room the whole time. It is good at its job. It is so good that you believe every word. So what do you do with that? You don't stop trusting yourself. You couldn't get through a single afternoon. You simply hold your own explanations a little more loosely. The next time you are certain you know why you snapped, why you put it off, why you said yes to the thing you didn't want. Treat that reason as your best guess, rather than eyewitness testimony. The true cause may be something you cannot see from the podium. And strangely, knowing that softens you. It makes you curious about yourself instead of certain. And curiosity is a much kinder place to live. Now, if one voice decides the story, something else decides the raw material that voice gets to work with. Because before you can explain your life, you have to notice it. And you notice far, far less than you think. You never actually experience the world. You experience the narrow slice of it your attention reaches out and grabs. You already know this. You've just never named it. Think about the week you decide to buy a particular car, a specific model, a specific color. Suddenly it's everywhere, on every street, in every parking lot, 3 of them at the same red light. The cars did not multiply overnight. Your filter changed. Your attention was handed a new instruction, and it began pulling that shape out of the noise for you, everywhere you went. That feels like a charming quirk, but now pointed at something that actually matters. Walk into a family dinner on an evening you feel loved, and you'll come home remembering the warmth, the laughter, the old joke that still lands. Walk into that very same room, with the very same people, on an evening you feel like a disappointment, and you'll register the one cold pause, the comment that scraped against you, the pair of eyes that didn't quite meet yours. Same table, same faces, 2 completely different nights, edited entirely by what your attention chose to keep and what it let fall away. Let that settle, because it's larger than it first sounds. It means the whole texture of your life, whether it feels generous or stingy, warm or cold, is shaped less by what is actually around you and more by what your attention has been trained to lift out of it. And here is the freeing part. That training is partly yours to direct. So stop treating your attention like a neutral window onto reality and start treating it like a budget you are spending every single day. Whatever you deliberately practice noticing, you slowly grow more sensitive to, until one day you feel surrounded by it. Point it, on purpose, at what you actually want more of. There's a voice deciding the story, and a filter deciding what it has to work with. Here is a third surprise, and it cuts closer to the bone. Even your feelings, the things that seem most raw, most undeniable, most you, are less like weather that happens to you, and more like a guess your brain is quietly making. We assume emotions are reactions. Something happens, and fear or excitement or dread simply arrives, fully formed, like a verdict. But the psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett has spent a career showing it works more like a prediction. Your brain notices the state of your body, the pounding heart, the tight chest, the shallow breath, and then it asks, given where I am right now, what does this most likely mean? And it answers that question before you're aware there was a question at all, which leads to something genuinely useful, because the same bodily storm can be read 2 completely different ways. Picture 2 people backstage, minutes before a high-stakes talk. Their bodies are doing the exact same thing, hammering heart, dry mouth, hands that won't stay still. The first one grips the sink and whispers, calm down, and in doing that, he declares war on his own body. He's now fighting the adrenaline, and the fight itself becomes fresh evidence to his brain that something is genuinely wrong, which produces more adrenaline. The second person takes the same shaking hands and says, out loud, I'm excited. Same chemicals, same surge. But now it's been relabeled as fuel. This isn't wishful thinking. The Harvard researcher Alison Wood Brooks tested it directly. People about to sing or speak or do math under pressure were told to say one of 2 simple things first. Either I am calm or I am excited. The ones who named it excitement consistently performed better. They sang more accurately. They spoke more persuasively. Their bodies had barely changed. The story they told about their bodies changed everything. So when arousal floods through you, stop reaching for the off switch. It isn't there, and groping for it just frightens you further. Relabel instead. This is my system getting ready, not this is something going wrong. You're not lying to yourself. The racing heart is real either way. You're simply choosing which true story your brain runs with, and that choice quietly bends the outcome. So far, we've met a mind that explains what it never decided, notices only a sliver, and assembles your feelings out of educated guesses. Now here is the bias that tints all of it, a thumb pressing down hard on one side of the scale, and you've felt its weight your whole life without seeing the hand. Your mind is built to take the negative more seriously than the positive. Get 5 genuine compliments and 1 offhand insult in a single afternoon, then ask yourself, honestly, which one you'll be replaying at midnight. You already know the answer. Or look at money. Find $100 on the sidewalk and you get a pleasant little lift that's mostly gone by lunch. Lose 100 from your pocket and it can sour the whole day. The pioneering work of Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky found that the pain of a loss runs about twice as strong as the pleasure of the same-sized gain. And it isn't only money. Researchers studying married couples found it took somewhere around 5 warm interactions to balance out a single sharp one. The instrument is not broken. It's just calibrated for a far more dangerous world than the one you actually live in. For your distant ancestors, missing a real threat in the grass was fatal, final, the end of the line. Missing a delight was merely a shame you'd live to regret. So the mind that survived to become yours leans hard toward the threat, the loss, the criticism, and it hands you that same tilted scale to weigh a life that is, mostly, not trying to kill you. Which means you can correct for it, deliberately, the way you'd adjust a scale you knew ran heavy, overweight the good on purpose. When something goes right, don't let it slide past in 2 seconds while you brace for the next problem. Pause on it. Write it down. Say it out loud to someone. Let it linger as long as you so easily let the bad linger. This isn't naive positivity, and it isn't pretending. It's recalibrating a biased instrument back toward the truth. Because the warmth was every bit as real as the wound. You were simply built to feel only one of them at full volume. Knowing the scale is tilted helps you read your own feelings more fairly. But what about actually changing what you do? The habits, the patterns, the version of yourself you keep promising to become. Here most of us reach for the same worn tool, willpower, grit the teeth, push harder, white-knuckle it until the urge passes. And sometimes that works, for a while, until you're tired or stressed or it's late, and then the whole thing collapses. There's a quieter lever, and it has almost nothing to do with effort. It's identity. Picture 2 people who have both decided to quit smoking. They're at the same party, and someone offers each of them a cigarette. The first one says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." And you can hear the strain humming underneath it, can't you? He's still a smoker, holding the line by force, and every offer is a small battle he might lose. The second person says, "No thanks, I don't smoke." Flat, easy, no struggle in it at all, because for her it isn't a temptation to be resisted. It simply isn't who she is anymore. Same nicotine, same craving, probably, somewhere underneath. But one of them is fighting their identity, and the other is expressing it. And over enough months, only one of those holds. Because here is the engine underneath it. We instinctively act in ways that stay consistent with who we believe ourselves to be. Every small action you take is quietly casting a vote, for the old self or the new one. One cigarette refused is a vote. One morning you lace up your shoes is a vote. No single vote decides the election, which is exactly why you can't see it working day to day and why you give up too early. But the votes accumulate, and over time they settle who you actually become. So stop leading with the goal and start leading with the identity. Don't set out merely to run more. Decide that you are becoming a runner, and then let every short, unglamorous jog stand as one more piece of evidence that it's true. Ask yourself less often, what do I want to achieve? And more often, who do I want this to turn me into? Achievements arrive, and then they're behind you. An identity walks with you into every room you'll ever enter next. And here is where one of these ideas can hand you something back almost immediately. A piece of freedom given to you for free, if you'll take it, because you walk through your days quietly convinced you're being watched. That stumble over a word in the meeting, the outfit you weren't sure about, the thing you said at dinner 3 years ago that still makes you wince when it floats up at 2 a.m. You carry the sense that other people noticed, that they catalogued it, that somewhere out there it's being remembered and judged. Almost none of that is happening. The psychologist Thomas Gilovich ran a study that has become a small classic. He had people put on a deliberately embarrassing t-shirt, an unflattering one, and walk into a room full of strangers. Afterward, he asked them to guess how many people had noticed the shirt. On average, they figured about half the room had clocked it and formed an opinion. The real number was closer to a quarter, and of that quarter, most could barely be bothered to care. It's called the spotlight effect, and the reason behind it is almost tender. Each of us is the permanent star of our own movie. You are at the absolute center of every scene you've ever lived, so it feels as though there must be a spotlight following you through every room. But so is everyone else the star of theirs. The people in that meeting where you fumbled your sentence weren't studying you. They were rehearsing their own point, worrying about their own inbox, wondering if their own voice sounded strange. Your most cringe-worthy moment was, to nearly everyone present, a forgettable blink, gone before they reached the parking lot. So the next time self-consciousness locks you up, remember the audience is thinner and far more distracted than it feels from inside your own head. Then take all that enormous energy you spend monitoring how you're coming across and pour it into the actual task or the actual person in front of you. That's where it was always meant to go. People don't remember your stumble. They remember how you made them feel, and you can't attend to them while you're busy guarding yourself. Now here's a thief working a slower, more patient angle, because the spotlight isn't the only thing quietly lying to you. Your own past is in on it too. You believe you remember your life. You don't. Not really. You remember a heavily edited cut of it. Your memory does not keep the full tape. It keeps the highlights. And above all, it keeps the ending. There's a study Daniel Kahneman often pointed to of patients going through a genuinely uncomfortable medical procedure. Some had a shorter version. Some had a longer version that included every bit of the shorter one's discomfort, plus more. But their procedure was eased gently at the end, rather than stopped at its worst point. By every honest measure, the longer group suffered more total pain. And yet, afterward, they remembered the whole experience as less awful. The gentle ending overwrote the truth of the middle. You have lived this without ever calling it by name. A week-long trip is mostly airports, traffic, a botched reservation, an argument about directions. But one golden evening on a balcony, with the light going soft, becomes the trip. The version you keep, the version you describe. And it runs the other way too, with the future you're chasing. That thing you were sure would make you happy for good. The new car, the title, the bigger place. It delivered. For a few weeks, genuinely. And then the glow quietly faded, and you settled back to roughly the mood you carried before it arrived, already eyeing the next thing on the horizon. The psychologist Philip Brickman found this even in lottery winners, who not long after the windfall were scarcely happier day to day than anyone else. You adapt. You always adapt, faster than you ever predict. So 2 moves come out of this, and they're practical. First, design your endings, because the ending casts the deciding vote over how the whole thing is remembered. However you leave the workout, the workday, the hard conversation. Leave it on the best note you honestly can, because that final note is what your memory will file the entire experience under. And second, stop chasing a permanent high that you are biologically built to adapt away from within weeks. One enormous purchase you'll stop feeling by spring is a poor trade. A life laid out with many small peaks, the coffee, the walk, the call to the friend, the chapter before sleep, keeps refilling a cup that quietly drains no matter what you pour in. Which brings us, at last, back to the gap I promised you at the very beginning. Because underneath the narrator, the filter, the predicted feelings, the tilted scale, the imagined spotlight, the edited memory, underneath all of it sits one skill that the rest depend on, and it is, quietly, the most freeing idea in all of psychology. A thought is not a command. A thought is not a fact. A thought is a mental event, passing through, like a sound you hear or a cloud you watch cross the window. And there is a small, enormous difference between thinking I'm a failure and thinking, I notice I'm having the thought that I'm a failure. Say them slowly and feel the difference in your body. The first one fuses you to the thought. You're inside it. There's no daylight. It's simply the truth, and you are the thing it describes. The second one opens up a half step of distance, and from that single step back, you can finally see the thought for what it actually is. Weather moving through, not the climate you live in. The same move works on urges, which is where it earns its keep. A craving for the cigarette, the drink, the angry text you shouldn't send, the third hour of scrolling, feels like a rising line that will climb forever until you give in. But the addiction researcher Alan Marlatt taught people to watch the urge instead of fighting it, and what they found is that it doesn't climb forever. It behaves like a wave. It swells, it crests, it holds for a moment, and then, entirely on its own, whether you feed it or not, it falls, usually within minutes. You don't have to win the fight. You only have to outlast the wave, watching it from the shore, while it does the thing waves always do. So when a painful or a pushy thought arrives, name it, quietly, to yourself. A thought is happening. An urge is here. That tiny act of labeling is the whole technique, and it reopens the gap, the small, precious space between what your mind says and what you actually do. And everything we have talked about this past hour lives inside that gap. The reason you hold loosely, the attention you redirect, the feeling you relabel, the good you let linger, the identity you vote for, the spotlight you switch off, the ending you choose. None of it is possible while you're fused to the thought. All of it becomes possible the instant you step back and notice. So pull the thread tight with me. Every idea in this hour points at the same quiet truth. You are not your first thought. You are not your loudest feeling. You are not the tidy story your mind hands you about why you did what you did. You are the one who can notice all of it. The narrator, the filter, the prediction, the bias, the wave. And the moment you can notice it, even a half step back, you can choose differently. That noticing is the gap I promised you at the start. And now you know precisely where it is. But understand this, because it's the part that protects you from disappointment. Rewiring was never going to be one enormous insight, one perfect hour, one click, and you're remade. It's the same small choice, made again tomorrow, and again the day after that, and the day after that, until one morning it no longer feels like effort, and simply starts to feel like you. The votes pile up. The new self walks in. So don't try to carry all 8 of these at once. You'll drop them all. Pick the one that landed hardest. You already know which one it was, the one that made something go still in you. And just watch for it, this week, out in your real life. Catch the narrator inventing a reason. Catch the spotlight that isn't really there. Catch the wave that crests and falls. One catch is enough to begin, and if this gave you a new way to see your own mind, stay close. Keep this playing. Come back to it. Let it run again on an ordinary evening, because some of these only truly click on the second listen, when you've already caught one of them out in the wild and you come back knowing what to feel for. There's more where this came from, whenever you're ready. For now, just sit with the one that landed. That's where it starts. That was always where it starts.